It's true, it's fine.
No, he can see you. See, you don't have the.
You have this all the way up. All the way up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Art Hofstetter, and I serve as the chair of the Elliott Society in Chicago. I'm also a proud alum of Washington University, having graduated in 1978. On behalf of the Alumni Association, it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's special event. Tonight's audience is diverse, with participants coming from 26 states. We have over 157 people joining us this evening. Alumni are representative of all 7 schools, and we also have many parents in attendance. Thank you all for coming and joining us tonight. Now, to facilitate easier interaction this evening, please rename yourselves with your first and last name and affiliation to WashU. If you have several participants joining you this evening in your home, please just list everyone's first names. And just as a reminder to rename yourself, hover over your video screen, click on the 3 dots and select Rename, and enter your new screen name and click OK. Throughout the tasting, please enter any questions you have for Jared in the chat box, and he'll get to as many as he possibly can. It is now my pleasure to introduce my dear friend and Washington alum, Jared Rouben, who graduated from WashU in 2004 and is the president and founder of the acclaimed Moody Brewery. Moody is a brewery in Chicago's South Loop and has recently expanded production and opened 2 new restaurants with 9-time Michelin-starred chef Jared Wentworth. Tonight, Jared will be taking us through a virtual tasting of Moody beers, all while explaining the culinary brewing processes and techniques, food pairing suggestions, and his journey to what would become a new genre of craft beers in America that began after graduating from WashU. I promise you a wonderful evening tonight, and it certainly will be fun. Jared, welcome. Jared, you may want to unmute. There you go.
Thank you, Art, and welcome everybody. It is so nice to be able to speak to my WashU family, and family is definitely the right word. It's our first year that we were able to do this nationally, and of course, I would have loved everyone to be at our brewery, but it's pretty amazing that we can connect with so many WashU alum throughout the country. So this evening, we're gonna talk about beer, we're gonna taste beer, we're gonna talk about food, and we're gonna talk about beer and food pairing. I'm gonna lead off by sharing a little background on myself and then Moody Tongue, and then we'll get into some beers. I started out at WashU in 2000, and I was a Liggett 1, and I really like to believe that really my passion for beer began at WashU. I can remember many times going up to Schnucks and looking at all the different beers and thinking like, wow, I can taste beers from England and Germany and Brussels without having to stamp my passport. And if we all threw in a couple bucks, we could taste many different beers. And I was blown away by all the different flavors and aromatics. I didn't really know what I was gonna do with that yet, but it was a start. And I like to say over those 4 years, I practiced a lot of R&D and beer and brewing, and most importantly, tasting. But it was actually a professor, Joe Bonwich, He was the food editor of the St. Louis Post that really encouraged me to explore the passion of not brewing, but really the culinary arts to begin with. In this class, he encouraged me to learn about food and beer and wine, and to take the next step and try to encourage me to learn more about it. And I know I could only do so much at WashU, but he was the one who really wrote my letter of recommendation to go to the Culinary Institute of America. And at the Culinary Institute of America is really where I really brought beer and food together. It was the first week of culinary school where I tried to join the wine club, and the wine club told me that I had to have a minimum GPA, which, look, I didn't have a grade at school yet, so that really wasn't going to work. And the other thing the wine club told me was that each event was going to be around $25, and that really didn't work with my budget. So I did what any other student would do, and I started a beer club. And that beer club, no GPAs were necessary, which I have to tell you, in culinary school, made it incredibly popular, and all events were going to be around $1. And I started inviting breweries from all over the Northeast, like Magic Hat, Sam Adams, Dogfish Head. And we started taking these beers and we started to cook and bake with them. So think we would take a lemon Hefeweizen and make cheesecake. We did sorbets and ice creams. And on the savory side, we started to explore soups and sauces and barbecues. And I really started seeing beer not just as a beverage, but also as an extension of food. Because a lot of the same flavors that I was experiencing in the kitchen while I was cooking, we were also getting in, I was also picking up in these different styles of beer. So I'd get cherry from Belgian doubles, and I'd get lemon from saisons, and I'd get bread notes from pilsners. And once I started to explore a little about the whole brewing process, I saw many similarities between cooking and brewing. In fact, all you're doing is manipulating a raw ingredient with time and temperature and creating a finished product. The major difference was with beer, you got to intoxicate people. And I don't know what chef wouldn't want to intoxicate people. And so I thought, maybe this is the path I need to take. But I really didn't know where to go. I didn't know any brewmasters. You know, if it was a physician, I had all the resources in the world at WashU. If it was someone in law or in finance, all I had to do was go to my Rolodex. But I didn't meet many brewers at WashU. I met many people that enjoyed drinking beer, but not many people that actually went into that field. So I was kind of at, you know, I didn't really know where to turn, and I really wasn't ready to give up cooking. Not that I've ever been ready to give up cooking, because brewing and cooking are the same. So I moved out to Napa Valley because I wanted to go work at a Michelin star kitchen, one specifically called the Martini House, that was very into seasonal ingredients. And also in Napa Valley, you had all the most delicious wines in our country. So you can see I was flirting with other beverages and other careers. I feel like it's now under one umbrella, but at the time, as much as I enjoyed beer at WashU, I also found myself enjoying wine. I don't know if many of you enjoyed Riddles. I don't think it exists anymore, but there were many nights where I'd explore the wine menu and the beer menu. When I moved out to Napa and I worked in this kitchen, one of my responsibilities was to go to the farmer's market each week to get ingredients for a tasting menu that changed weekly. And a farmer's market in California is one thing, but a farmer's market in Napa Valley, I mean, you really have nature's candy at your disposal. You're slicing a tomato, it looks like a firework display. I came across pluots. I mean, maybe our West Coasters on this lecture know about pluots, but it's just a hybrid between a plum and an apricot. So imagine this. You've got a delicious pale ale, and all of a sudden you can incorporate the flavor of plum and the aromatics of apricot. And for me, that felt like progress in brewing. And so what I started doing is taking all the same techniques that I was learning at the Martini House kitchen and applying it to my home brews. And I would bring in these home brews. And the first couple batches I brought to my chef, and he was like, there's no words. And so I was like, okay, back to the drawing board. But then when I started using these ingredients, these California fruits, and putting it in my beer, the chef gave me a nod and said, it's good. And good in a Michelin star kitchen is like really good. Or for me, it was. And so it was kind of an aha moment where I'm like, wow, if I apply what I know about cooking and the culinary arts to beer, I can bring these two worlds together and really develop a style that made sense to me, because I was always thinking in food and thinking in flavor, taste, and aromatics, and really didn't know how to translate that to brewing. And so I didn't. I kept what I know about food and just kept the same techniques and just tried to incorporate those styles into my beers. And that style of brewing is culinary brewing, which is the foundation of Moody Tongue. And it's just taking a chef's mindset to highlight flavors and aromatics and balanced beer. I really didn't know how to get in the beer industry yet. I was out in Napa, still cooking, and I'm not sure if I was ready. I felt like I should maybe put myself in a little bit more punishment from a culinary side. So I moved back to New York and worked at Thomas Keller's 3 Michelin star per se. And this was an establishment that really taught me the fundamentals of the type of chef I want to be, the type of brewer I want to be. They were very, very big on multitasking and sense of urgency and sourcing the absolute best ingredient and never compromising. And I was the guy there that was always talking about beer, which used to drive our sommelier, and actually it drove him nuts. You know, he was there teaching us about Burgundies and Bordeaux's and Champagnes. And here I was talking about porters and IPAs and Pilsners. And last time I checked, you know, the per se menu doesn't have many beers. In fact, you know, they had a couple. But that's not what they were trying to showcase. So the Somm and one of the other chefs was like, look, if you love brewing so much, you should go learn about it. And I was like, okay, I will. And on my days off, I started working at Chelsea Brewing Company. And all I was doing was cleaning tanks and digging grain out. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I'm not crazy about cleaning. But if it was in a brewery, I couldn't be happier. And it was then I was like, okay, I really need to make the leap. I need to jump into brewing, and, you know, I should do a little bit more homework. And so I found that one of the oldest brewing schools in the country is actually in Chicago. It's called Siebel. It's been around since before Prohibition. And I moved to Chicago, and I went to the school that had a dual degree program in Munich. I spent half my time in Chicago, the other half of my time in Munich. And when I moved back from Germany, I got hired by Goose Island, and 11 months later became the brewmaster there for about 3.5 years. And it was at Goose Island where I really started to practice this craft of culinary brewing. And I started this program where I would bring in chefs throughout the city. So think Rick Bayless, Stephanie Iser, Graham Elliott, Paul Kahn. If you were opening a restaurant in Chicago, a new restaurant in Chicago, and sometimes if you had a great restaurant between 2010 and really 2012, we'd probably made a beer together. And it was a wonderful experience because for me, it allowed me to kind of break down the wall between brewer and chef. And it also gave me access to all the best producers and farmers, because all these chefs had great hookups. So if I needed peaches or nectarines or apricots, I was introduced to Mick Klug of Klug Farms. And if I needed grapes for Saison, then I could go to Seedling, where Peter Klein has absolutely fantastic grapes and strawberries. And if I needed honey, I could go to Ellis Farms. And so my resources, they grew with these relationships. And for me, I also was able to kind of work on my vocabulary and communication, really speaking in food, because if I was creating a beer with a chef, the chef would understand the language of food. So instead of saying Pilsner malt, I might say a French baguette. Instead of saying Cascade hops, I might say ruby red grapefruit. And all of a sudden, I wouldn't have to use any sort of technical brewing language, and I could just speak good food to create different recipes. And so about 52 chef collaborations later, I really was able to hone my craft, not only become a better brewer, but also just have much better ingredients. And around 2014, I convinced my first cousin, business partner, Jeremy Cohn, who's a Penn graduate, but we can't hold that against him because he's engaged to Alyssa Miller, WashU alumni, class of 2010. So as he says, he's averaging up. I totally agree with him. But convinced him to come down to Chicago and build this brewery with me. And we started out in the Pilsen neighborhood, and we only served 2 food items, something sweet and something salty. The salty was oysters. I love oysters. I think they're fantastic with beer, and I could eat 100 of them and want to eat 100 more. And the sweet was a 12-layer German chocolate cake, which we've become really famous for. And each piece is about like a pound and 12 inches in height. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but until you taste it, it's hard to know that it is just nothing but fantastic and delicious. And it's not too sweet and salty. And honestly, if we had more time, I'd probably just talk about the cake. But what started out as just 2 items eventually grew into something a lot bigger in 2019 when we moved to our current location in the South Loop. And we took a 10,000 square foot space in Pilsen and grew into a 30,000 square foot space, which is where we live now. And when we did that, we had the opportunity to also put 2 restaurants in our space. One is the bar at Moody Tongue. So think massive brewing library, a fireplace, marble, and comfy, cozy leather furniture. And on the menu, steak, whole fish, lobster rolls, oysters. It's just delicious because we have a 9-time Michelin star chef, Jared Wentworth. We have a lot of J's in this company, and a lot of Jareds, or 2 now, and maybe more in the future. But he's incredible to work with, incredibly talented, and his passion for food only rivals his passion for beer, which makes my life that much easier. The other restaurant that we have at Moody Tongue is the dining room at Moody Tongue, where we showcase a 12-course beer and food pairing menu. So think caviar and foie gras and truffles, each one specifically chosen for a beer. And sometimes the beer could be only 1 keg or 1 barrel, and other times it could be one of our larger batch beers. But that's the fun we have, and it changes seasonally. Now, this year was unique, or this past year was unique with COVID, because we had to shut down the restaurant in March, and we had to pivot real quick. And our goal was to keep as many people employed as possible. But with that pivot, we opened up Moody Tongue Smoked Meats, which is a barbecue, So think pulled pork and ribs and brisket and smoked chicken. We ship that nationwide, and I've always wanted a barbecue restaurant. I think it pairs so well with beer, and I just got one a lot sooner than I thought I would, and that's okay. The other wonderful thing that happened, not many, but the other thing that I'm very pleased about that happened during the pandemic is we built an outdoor patio, which, summer season you celebrate in Chicago. It's not too long, but while it's here, you want to be outside. So now you can drink beer, eat oysters, and enjoy some sunshine. Very soon, we will open back up. Right now, we're serving beer and we're serving cake. And we're creating a brand new menu. And we're at a 40% capacity here in Chicago, but that's going to change soon. And I expect everyone on this tasting to come visit me. But speaking of tasting, it's now time to taste some beer. So the first beer we're going to enjoy is our Aperitif Pilsner. This is the one you want to grab. Nice baby blue label. Aperitif is just a beverage to get your palate excited about consumption. When you're pouring your beer, what you want to do is take your glass, hold it at a 45-degree angle, and then pour like this, and then you're going to slowly turn the glass vertical and twist the top of the bottle. You twist the top of the bottle so that you don't get any drippage, and you can use the same thing with wine. So before we taste, you want to smell beer. That sounds nice. So the first thing you want to do is take your nose and get right in there. And just take a small sniff. And then think about what you might be experiencing. And that could be French baguette. It could be a croissant. It could be subtle fruit notes. And then after you have an idea of what you're picking up on the nose, you want to try to hunt those flavors on the palate. Now, when you sip, take 2 sips. The first one cleanses the palate. The second one is where you pick up the flavor. Pilsner is one of the most popular beer styles in the world. You can travel anywhere and you can find a Pilsner. And it's often overlooked or people discount it, but it's the most difficult style to create. In fact, if you're a brewer, it's probably the first beer that you order. It's because it's so light in body, you can't hide any flaws. So other beers have a lot of hops, other beers are barrel aged or they're sour or very malty, and that's not the Pilsner. It's either very right or very wrong. So if you can make your Pilsner right, everything else should be quite easy. It's 5%, it's German style, and I love pairing this with aged cheddar. I love cheese in general, but aged cheddar like Hooks from Wisconsin or Barber from England. And if you're not in the mood for cheese, then I think oysters are a perfect pairing too. I think Kumamoto oysters are probably my favorite, but they're light and refreshing and perfect with light beer. So cheers, everyone. The goal at Moody Tongue, or for me as a brewer, is to create beers that you can have more than one of. So might be present on the palate and then dissipate. I don't like to feel too heavy in the belly, and I don't like to feel too heavy on my palate. So this aperitif is a perfect way to begin. So we'll take another sip. When pairing with beer, one of the best things about pairing with beer is the carbonation. That carbonic acid actually acts as a cleanser. Those bubbles dance on your tongue, but they also scrub it so that each time you take a bite of food, it's a fresh bite. And I know Chef very much likes that. And each time you take a sip, it's a fresh sip, which for me as a brewmaster, I also enjoy as well. You can get this with champagne or cava or sparkling wine, but beer does it, I think, best. Does anyone have any questions about this beer or Pilsner?
Oh, sorry. Is it?
Oh,
Sorry, I'm doing this wrong. I'll speak up. What does German style mean as opposed to Czech style?
Oh, excellent question. So a Czech style Pilsner usually has more bittering hops usually has more bittering hops. So you get a lot more bitterness in the front end of the palate. Whereas a German style beer will balance malt and hops. So malt is that bready note. Think like Cheerios, kind of the same thing, that grain. Beer is just liquid bread, everybody. So that's kind of the way I see Pilsner, is like just a liquid croissant or a liquid French baguette. But the Czech Pilsner is usually hoppier than the German style Pilsner.
We have a question here.
Yeah.
What kind of hops do you use? Saaz?
Wow, love that. We used to use Saaz. I changed the recipe to Hallertau, which Saaz I was using in our Czech Pilsner. The Hallertau for our recipe, I think works really well. Great hop question. Oh, we got another question? Here we go. Can you talk about the shape of the glass? We're talking about the Moody Tongue shape. This one right here, I'm assuming. So this glass, I love this glass because usually beer is served ice cold or too cold in my book. You're like, things that are too cold mute the palate. Sometimes there's certain beers or certain liquids you want so cold because you don't want to taste anything. But if you're really proud about your ingredients and you want to showcase them, then you don't want them to be, we don't use the W word, warm, but you want them to be almost less cold. And I have very little control in that. So that's why this beer totally helps me, because your hands provide heat. And as you hold the glass, the beer becomes less cold, and you'll see that it actually tulips open, and that tulip allows for all the aromatics to show themselves. And so you do all the hard work, and by the time you smell the beer, you get all the aromatics that you should. And by the time you taste it, it's the exact temperature that you should enjoy it.
This is fascinating.
All right. Oh, where did you get the name? Moody Tongue. Great question. Moody tongue just means someone with a discerning palate, someone who cares about what they consume. The tongue is the ultimate judge. And every time, I mean, how often do we say, what are you in the mood for tonight? You know, is it Chinese food? Is it pizza? Is it Pilsner? Or is it porter? These are questions that we ask ourselves, but everyone on this call has kind of a standard of excellence, because I don't think anyone here goes to a bar or a restaurant and says, could you give me your most average Pilsner, please, along with your most average burger? No, that's a ridiculous thing. So like Moody Tongue is that standard of excellence, where we do use the highest quality of ingredients. And that's kind of how we showcase ourselves through that name. My opinion, temp should be and does the optimal temp change depending on type of beer? Yeah, yes, this is a great question. What temp should beer be consumed, and does the optimal temp change depending on the style of beer? Absolutely. I think if we were over in England or having English style beers, it's completely appropriate to drink those beers anywhere from 45 to 52 degrees. If we're having light lagers, domestic light lagers, you probably want them as cold as possible. And for barrel-aged beers, you can have them at any temperature, really, because we really want everyone to experience every layer of flavor. And I think we'll experience that towards the end of this tasting. Can you cook with any of your beers? From Molly and Jason Glazer. Yes, absolutely. If you like to braise brisket as much as I do, then these barrel-aged beers will be pretty fantastic with it. If you're looking for beer cheese soup, the Pilsner would be my favorite beer to use. The Saison, for everyone who likes to enjoy a big pot of mussels with garlic, butter, and more beer, then Saison's definitely the one to go to. How much head do you want on a Pilsner? Your Pilsner pour didn't create much head. Is that a personal preference? It really depends. I think Pilsners can have really small amount of head, or if we're over in Germany, you could have a moosey head. It has a lot to do with the carbonation and the glass. The wonderful thing about head is that that's where all the aromatics of beer are kept. So if you want a lot on the nose, or there's a beer that's trying to showcase a lot of aromatics like Saison, then you definitely want more head. But for barrel-aged beers, you won't find any head whatsoever.
We got a quick question.
Yeah, of course.
Are you the German Reinheitsgebot laws? Do you like try to stick with like the 3 ingredients, or do you find yourselves when you're crafting your beers adding more more flavors and additives to your beer?
So we're bringing up the Reinheitsgebot, which is the German purity law, which was created because there were so many bad beers out there, some that were getting people sick, others that were just not acceptable. So they said that, look, if you're going to make beer, you got to use malt and you got to use hops. And I don't know, sometimes they use wheat, sometimes not. But do we stick to the German purity law here? No. Am I a traditionalist? Yeah. Do I respect German beers? Absolutely. But I mean, now with beers, people are throwing everything from Cookie Crisp to Laffy Taffy. I mean, look, I saw someone throw fried chicken and waffles in a beer. I don't suggest doing that. I suggest eating the fried chicken and waffles with a beer. But one of the reasons I got drawn into this industry is because there were no rules. With wine, if I wanted to make Cabernet and Napa Valley, I'd use 75% Cabernet grapes. If you want to make beer and call it whatever you want, you could call it, you could put sprinkle, cupcake, ale on a label, and everyone's going to be super excited and they might line up to enjoy it. So no, we don't follow the rules here at Moody Tongue. We definitely respect tradition, but we do not follow the rules. Do we bottle condition any of our beers? No, we don't. And can we drink another beer? Yes, we can. And our next beer would be our Steeped Emperor's Lemon Saison.
That was the one that broke.
Yeah.
So when we name our beers, we try to be transparent. We try. The first word is the culinary technique, steeped. The second word is the flavor and aromatic you experience, Emperor's Lemon. And the third word is the beer style, Saison. So steeped, for all our tea fans out here, we know that that's just taking an ingredient and introducing it to a liquid and pulling flavor, taste, and aromatic. And then Emperor's Lemon is a blend of Meyer lemon zest, pith, juice, and leaf. And Meyer lemon's my favorite lemon. I think it's like lemon royalty. And Saison is the beer style. Saison just translates into season. And this was a seasonal beer that was brewed in the winter when labor was, when there wasn't as much to do on the farm, so that when summer came around, they'd have plenty of beer to drink. Now this beer's got a little bit more head on it, and that's what we want in this style. On the nose, you're gonna find bubblegum and lemon. Go ahead, get back in there. Think Bazooka Joe. Think that Meyer lemon. That's right. And then we're gonna try to explore, try to find these flavors on the palate. 2 sips. Ooh, this is good. So, you know, when I created this beer, my vision was for every time that you were going to use lemon on your food, you wouldn't need to because you had this beer. So I like fish tacos, fried scallops, lobster roll, all perfect companions for this beer. Or roast chicken, that'd be pretty nice too. It's a little bit more effervescent, it's got more carbonation, and it's able, from a flavor standpoint, able to stand up to those foods. Lemon candy, yeah, lemon heads is pretty nice, and I love candy as a descriptor too. So, yeah, that actually works really well. Saison is one of my favorite types of beer. Sophisticated Belgian shandy. I like it. Does anyone have any questions about saisons? Really, really popular in America and obviously in Belgium, but some of the most sought after beers. I like to think these are the most food friendly beers. They say like Chianti is some of the most food friendly wine, but saisons have to be some of the most food friendly beers. It goes with seafood and also go with poultry. What yeast strain do we use for the saison? We propagate all our own yeast strain in-house. I think this one no one has Saison DuPont, which is like some of the most well-known Saison from Belgium, but it's quite similar. But yeah, it's something that we've actually kind of created in-house, which is really fun because tasting this will bring out flavors that you won't get in any other beers or any other saisons. What's our process for tasting and developing recipes as a former chef? Well, it all begins with inspiration. I get a lot of my inspiration by going to food markets and restaurants, and anytime, or farmers markets too. I go through the farmers market, I'm tasting different fruit and trying to think of ways that we could recreate those flavors and aromatics through hops. Sometimes we use the ingredient and sometimes we just use hops. But from there, I kind of have an idea of like, okay, I really love the flavor and aromatic of Meyer lemon. What beer style makes the most sense? And we'll showcase it best. And then from there, we'll start to look at the malt, the hops, get the yeast, and then we might talk to Chef Jared and think about what kind of food he wants to pair with this. Do you guys brew more ales or lagers? Why? Great question. So the first beer that we had, the Aperitif Pilsner, is a lager, and beer is broken down into 2 categories. They fall under 2 umbrellas. You're either an ale or you're a lager. If you're an ale, your fermentation, the lifespan is about 3.5 weeks, and you ferment at warmer temperatures. If you're a lager, it takes twice as long, so six or more weeks, and you ferment at colder temperatures, like anywhere from 48 degrees to 52 degrees. The Saison was an ale, the Pilsner was a lager, and we're kind of split. We do maybe a little bit more ales, but you know, we really do both because we love both styles of beer. What is the next big trend coming down the pike among ambitious brewers? Well, fasten your seatbelt. It feels like the trend changes every week. You know, it's hazy IPAs one week, sour beers the next. Sparkle beers made a 1-week appearance, and I'm happy they're gone. Glitter beers followed sparkle beers. I was just as confused. But look, the thing about brewing, I mean, you can't close any doors here because people, they explore. And the wilder you get, the more popular a beer can become. And look, for me, we have to have a reason to put an ingredient in the beer. The base beer is already delicious. So if we add an additional ingredient, it has to enhance the finished product. So about 99% of the ideas, I kind of flush down the drain. But that 1%, we put it in production. And we start with small batch, like a 10-barrel batch of beer. And if we really like it, then we'll make 40. And if we really like it, we'll make 60. What's our best-selling beer? Pilsner and Juice Lychee IPA and Nectarine IPA. IPAs are pretty popular, and Pilsner, it's just the most popular style, light and refreshing and delicious. When people add lactose to the beers, does it change? Yes, it does. Lactose adds like almost like a creamy mouthfeel, a little bit softer. Any questions on saisons before we move into the world of IPA?
Hey, Jared, I put it in the chat, but just the difference in saisons between kind of more traditional Belgian-y style versus tart and sour.
Belgian style versus tart and sour. So all of that falls, you can have a Belgian style saison that is tart and sour. And that has everything to do with what the brewer's vision for that style of beer. If you come and visit us, you'll have some of our sour saisons that are on draft. Those sour beers usually are aged in barrels for a little bit longer. We have these beautiful Chardonnay and Sangiovese barrels where I age our saison, and then we might introduce some microorganisms like Lactobacilli, Brettanomyces, Pediococcus, and those bugs, as we call them, will create fruit notes and sour fruit notes, and it makes pairing with some of Chef Jared's food really, really exciting. For our 12-course tasting menu, about 6 of the beers are sour Belgians. 4 of those are sour saisons, and they're unbelievable. I only wish I had more space and I could speed up the process, but it takes time to create those styles of beer, anywhere from 1 year to 3 years, which means not only do you need a hookup for the barrels, but you also need a really patient business partner. Jeremy. All right, let's dig into some IPA. Juice Lychee IPA. The culinary technique, juiced. We've all been consuming juice lately. Lychee, delicious fruit from China. And then IPA, which stands for India Pale Ale. Okay, so IPA. I mean, I think all of us here have probably heard IPA many, many times. I think in America, it's the most popular craft beer style. What I'll tell you is this. Look, if you've had an IPA that has turned you off in the past, don't give up. It's like saying, hey, look, I mean, no one here would say no to a burger after having one bad burger. We wouldn't give up on hamburgers, would we? No, absolutely not. So there's no reason to do that for IPA, because all brewers, brewers are going to make IPA differently. So if one didn't do it right, don't give up. Just try to find a brewery that makes beer that you enjoy. IPA stands for India Pale Ale, and it got its name when the British were over in India, and they were trying to send beer overseas. And by the time it got to India, it was spoiled. And you can only imagine how unhappy these soldiers were when they got their spoiled beer. I mean, we get upset when our Uber Eats is 5 minutes late. We're irate and we're ready to, take someone's head off. So, 5 weeks later and your beer's not proper, you can only imagine how upset they would get. So they did what, well, they were smart. They understood they needed stability. So they increased the amount of hops and they increased the alcohol and gave birth to the IPA.
Oh, there's IPA.
So on the nose, you're going to get lychee, really delicate fruit that I experienced over in China. We sell our beer over in China, and went over there many times and explored the food markets. And I loved the fruit, and I wanted to try to recreate it in beer. And so we picked a specific yeast strain and a combination of hops, and made this beer, and I thought it was really fantastic. we were talking about like candy, or maybe I was thinking about candy earlier. And on the, if you've ever had shock tarts, I get like shock tarts or airheads. These are the aromatics I'm picking up. And the truth is, this is candy. No one's ever been upset at candy, right? Like we think about candy, we think about some of the best times of our life, whether it's Halloween or birthdays. So if you can pick up candy as a descriptor on the nose and the palate, you're already winning. Sour Skittles, that would work too. So with this IPA, you're gonna see that it's not too bitter. And that's really important to me because I think all of us have had IPAs that hurt the palate and the tongue. And look, we're Moody tongue. We can't go around hurting people's tongue. That's not gonna work for anybody. So we wanted to balance the malt and the hops, and where the flavor and aromatics are present, and then they dissipate so that you can come back and have another sip and maybe cut through that bacon cheeseburger on brioche, or what else do I love to have with IPAs? How about apricot glazed ribs would be pretty fantastic, or even Peking duck. Anything that's nice and rich that you can cut right through. If you're not starving by this point, you've already eaten. But you want to work with rich foods because the IPA is able to stand up to it and also cut right through it. Who's got questions about IPAs? Yes, I don't love IPAs, but I can drink this. Thank you. What food will we pair with this? What does regionality play into the flavor profile of IPAs? Fantastic question. You're about terroir in the wine industry, and that's just where things are grown in specific regions. And in the brewing industry, we see a little bit of that. But as far as regionality goes in IPAs, you may have heard of West Coast IPAs, which are usually really high in alcohol, like 9%. So like fasten your seatbelts on that one. I mean, 2 of them, and you're gonna feel really good. The New England IPA is incredibly popular. New England IPA or hazy IPA is a beer that is not clear. It's almost like pulpy orange juice. And now, I don't know, we like to say Midwestern IPA. It just means it's really tasty and delicious. I don't know, we really haven't defined that yet, but I'm working on it. The regionality is important, especially when you're in hop growing regions. So in California and Oregon, they can actually call their farmer 15 minutes later, get fresh hops to throw right into their beer. In Chicago, we've only had that luxury over the last couple of years as farmers have been growing hops in Michigan. And that's just wonderful to have that fresh ingredient, but that's pretty new for us. I live in San Diego, the land of IPAs. I like yours, it's different, thank you. Have you ever experienced with a beer that didn't taste like you expected? It would, and you had to throw it away. Everyone loves to ask this question. Oh yeah, you know, the beers that didn't work out, they scar me, and I definitely don't forget them. I tried to do a hoppy Hefeweizen at Goose Island, fortunately at Goose Island. And that didn't work out. And look, the Germans have been making beers for a long time. And I don't know if I've ever heard of a hoppy Hefeweizen in Germany. So for me to come in there and try to create that, ambitious. That one didn't work out. The other thing that I still need to work on is blueberry beers. I love blueberries. I love blueberry cobbler. I love blueberry pie. I thought that'd be fantastic in a beer, but blueberry is full of water. And unless you dehydrate them, I didn't know this at the time. Unless you dehydrate them, it's hard to pick up the flavor and it's hard to pick up the aromatics. So I'm still working on that one. Yeah, California's overrun with IPAs. Cool. Don't forget double IPAs and triple IPAs. Yes, they are delicious too. Any other questions about the Juice Lychee IPA? What about freeze-dried blueberries? Freeze-dried blueberries would be fantastic. They're really, really expensive, especially because we don't grow blueberries. Well, I don't have well, yeah, we do. They would be expensive, but I would definitely use them in a small batch. I think they would, I love blueberries, and I think it'd be great in a Belgian blonde or a Belgian golden. Blueberry Belgian blonde, that sounds good. When do you introduce the lychee? Primary fermentation? What makes a hazy IPA? A hazy IPA, sometimes you put flour to make it hazy. Sometimes people use a lot of wheat. Everyone kind of has a different technique. When do I introduce the lychee? Believe it or not, there's no lychee in this beer. It's just the combination of the hops that recreate it. And I learned a very valuable lesson with incorporating ingredients in beer. There's a nectarine that I absolutely love from Klug Farms. And when we first started Moody Tongue, we made this sliced nectarine IPA, and I bought all the nectarines in the Midwest. I was really proud of it until Jeremy said, hey, what are we gonna do when it's no longer nectarine season? And this is a really hot beer. You know, this is really something out. I'm like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? So we had to change the yeast, we changed the combination of hops, and then we were able to recreate it consistently. And I took the same approach to the lychee after that first error. But yeah, definitely a valuable lesson. Cubs or Cardinals? Oof, not touching that one. I don't know. I'm not too happy with either team right now. Louisville Cardinals? Yeah, I'm all down. I'm totally down. Will you make another batch of the pear beer? Oh my gosh, the Asian pear. Oh, wow. Yeah, we have this wonderful farmer. Her name is Oriana, and she grows these amazing Asian pears, and we put it in a sour saison, and it is delicate, decadent. It's the closest thing to, I guess, vintage champagne. And we serve that on the tasting menu. Unfortunately, I have to wait a couple of years till she can produce more of the pear, but I am obsessed. Have you ever made your version of a cream ale? We talked about that in our brewing meeting today. Have I made one? No. Do I think they're great? Yeah. Is it hard to sell a cream ale? Maybe because of the name. I wish it had a different name because I really enjoy the style. It just doesn't move on a menu. Okay, what about grape? Oh, I've been working on a grape ale. So over in Italy, they have access to amazing grapes, and they'll create beers and incorporate beautiful grapes and let them age in barrels. And they've really developed a style that I've tried to recreate for a couple of years, and I just haven't been able to do it. And it may be because I don't have access or a hookup for a specific type of grape, but I'm not going to give up on it because I love wine, I love beer, and I would like to bring the two together. I mean, they're great on their own, don't get me wrong, but the two together are pretty fantastic too. Is there a traditional style of beer that you personally dislike? Bière de Garde. I don't like Bière de Garde. I would drink it. I would drink it, but it's just not my favorite. Peaches or cream ale. What about pineapple IPA? You know what? Our sales rep just asked me to make a pineapple IPA. I'm working on it because I think that would be really good. Think about like Al Pastor tacos with pineapple IPA. That's a winner. That's a winner right there. Okay. Who's ready to dig into some barrel-aged beers? Yes, question. Oh, yeah, let's dig into some barrel-aged beers. Okay, duh, Jared, come on, get it together. All right, I'm a Louisvillian. I'm from Kentucky, and I love bourbon, and I love beer. So how do we bring these two worlds together? We make a beer, and we age it in bourbon barrels. This is the beer you are looking for, the Bourbon Barrel-Aged Gingerbread Imperial Stout. If you take a look at the label, it also says 15% alcohol. So if you're not feeling anything yet, you're about to. That's like a pretty high ABV wine. So like in the wine world, because I know we have some wine drinkers here, think like Petite Syrah, Zinfandel, Syrah, like real high ABV wine. Now, let's crack our beer. Oh, who's bourbon barrels? Question. We're using Woodford Reserve on these bourbon barrels. When you smell this beer, it's like taking a gingerbread cookie that's been dipped in Woodford Reserve. Go ahead, try. My gosh. Isn't that lovely? So what we do is we create an Imperial Stout, not so different from the WashU beer that we did at our event. And we let it sit in a bourbon barrel for over a year. And what happens is the liquid actually gets pulled into the wood, and then it pushes out depending on the season and the temperature. And you pick up bourbon, vanilla, molasses. And we take those base flavors, and then we incorporate gingerbread and all the spices that you think of when you have gingerbread. I gotta tell you, this just, when I smell it, it makes me so happy. And this will be great with our 12-layer German chocolate cake. It'd be awesome with cheesecake and black and white cookies. Does anyone not like a black and white cookie? They're so good. We noticed you use a different glass. Any reason? You know what? The truth is, if I could use all our glassware here at Moody Tongue, I probably would, but it would upset pretty much everyone in the company. You can use different glasses for different styles of beer. You probably would use a snifter for this, but no, there's no specific reason for this one. Normally I would use a snifter, and that's just because it would allow the aromatics to really open up. The Moody Tongue glass does the exact same thing. It's just hard for me to get my beak in there. So, you know, I'm trying to get access as close. For me, if my nose isn't touching liquid, I didn't get close enough. You can only, do a lot of that. So let's go and let's try it again. You thought about gingerbread cookie. You thought about wood for reserve. Thought about chocolate, vanilla. Oh my, it feels good on the palate. It also feels good in the belly. Yeah, I need some of that cake. No doubt about that. Can you reuse barrels or only once? Well, I gotta tell you, I'm pretty big on the selection of barrels, and I have to give credit actually to my mom on this one, because she's the one who gave Moody Tongue our hookup. When we were opening Moody Tongue, there were a lot of other breweries opening up too, and everyone was trying to get their hands on barrels. And I remember calling my mom and just complaining and saying, like, look, I can't get my hands on Kentucky barrels. And she's like, well, why don't you call William Hornaday Jr.? And I was like, why would I call him? And she's like, well, because he does something with the barrels. And I was like, well, okay, then I'm going to call him. And I called William Hornaday Jr. And he's like, yeah, Jared, I can hook you up with all the whiskey barrels, wine barrels that you want. And so now we have access to Woodford Reserve, Angel's Envy, Wild Turkey, Four Roses, Heaven Hill, and rum barrels. We've got Cabernet barrels, Chardonnay barrels. And now we're sitting on, I think, over 400 barrels at the brewery. And I'm very specific because barrel for me is just another ingredient. And I know there's some whiskey drinkers here, and we know that Four Roses does not taste like Woodford Reserve, and that doesn't taste like Angel's Envy. And so if you're looking at it from an ingredient standpoint, put your base beer in there, and then you think about what layer of flavor you want to incorporate. For me, Woodford Reserve, it almost has that like caramel toffee note to it, and a little bit of chocolate. And I thought that'd be perfect if our base beer was big and roasty and more chocolate. So chocolate on chocolate always works for me, especially if you're going to introduce some gingerbread and vanilla spices with it. Okay. A month, how much does each barrel cost? Hey, Jeremy, how much does each barrel cost? Too much nowadays. You know, when I first got in, it was like $75 a barrel. Now they're anywhere from like $150 to $175, and some of the rare ones can be even pricier. And you know, we're Moody Tongue. I'm always going to try to buy the most expensive barrels because, and I think someone asked earlier, can we reuse the barrels? Well, if it's bourbon barrel aged beer, I'm a purist. I only use it once, but after that, we'll neutralize the barrel by just putting hot water in there, dumping it out, putting hot water, dumping it out. And then that's where we can begin to use the barrel for sour beers. So we've got a section of the brewery for sour beers and another section for bourbon barrel aged beers. I don't like to throw anything away because once I've used the barrel up for sour beers, we cut the barrels in half and we make planters. So anyone who's looking for a planter, please contact Jeremy at moodytongue.com. Sorry, Jeremy. Where can we buy your beer in Chicago? Whole Foods, Binny's, bottle shops. And if you don't see us, all you have to do is ask for us. And if you're looking for where we sell beer, you can also reach out at contact@moodytongue.com. But the best way to get our beer is to ask the beer buyer and say, hey, bring in Moody Tongue. I'd like to try their Saison, the Juice Lychee, Aperitif Pilsner, or use some gingerbread. Is the sweetness from wow, this is great. Rasheed, awesome. Is the sweetness from unfermented residual sugar? Yeah, it is. The sugars that you're experiencing here are not fermentable, which is a good thing because otherwise, we might have some trouble with fermentation, and which just means more CO2, and we don't need that in a bottle down the road. So yeah, these are unfermentable sugars. I have a small vineyard. Could use some barrels. Don't cut them up. Mitch, you got him. Do you sell craft beer sell in St. Louis? We need to sell our beer in St. Louis. For us, it starts with finding a distributor, someone that we feel like we could have a good partnership, and then we send the beer in the market. But I need to get back to St. Louis. If I got to hit up the hill, I got to get some emails and just go around WashU campus. Yeah, that's right. I threw emails in there. I know 50% of the people are upset about that. Do you ship your cakes? Not yet, and that's only because when we've tried to ship it in the past, it didn't turn out well. We're gonna get there because that cake needs to be shipped, but for the time being, you can only have it in Chicago. How does your yeast tolerate the ABV? Well, great question. Yeast is sensitive. I always say it's the soul of beer, and not only does it create like the aromatics, but it really brings life. And sometimes with too much booze, we don't do well. Sometimes with too much booze, the yeast doesn't do well. So we choose a specific yeast strain that's able to handle really 10% and above. In my opinion, it rocks. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Are your restaurants fully open now? Only for cake and beer, but that's going to change very, very, very soon. And Chef Jerry is working on a completely new menu. And I've been enjoying his food since I first made a beer with him when I was at Goose Island in 2011. And he's never disappointed. I mean, he's the best. He's that good. So I'm excited. What kind of chocolate would you pair with? Oh, I love chocolate so much. What kind of chocolate would I pair with this beer? Wow. I mean, if I could say Swiss chocolate, I would do that. But look, M&Ms would work really well with this. Let's not, peanut M&Ms, Hershey's. Can you really be upset at any chocolate? I haven't found a lot of bad chocolates out there, and that may be because I'm obsessed with chocolate. But candy is wonderful to pair with beer. I know that might sound a little silly, but it works really, really well. And until you try it, can't really knock it. Do you have a favorite brewer anywhere? Chicago. Is that a question? That's like my favorite brewer is a friend? Because I would probably say Tim Marshall, who was my first boss, or Greg Matthews. Greg Matthews is Platt Park Brewing Company in Colorado, and Tim Marshall works at Rock Bottom, Tampa. But there's amazing breweries in Chicago, from Revolution to Metropolitan to Half Acre to Off Color to Around the Bend. I mean, we've really become a thriving brewing community, and it's great because a lot of competition means you have to make better beer. And the culinary scene in New York is great. The beer scene in Chicago is pretty amazing. We're also eating dark chocolate caramel. Well, I'm jealous because that sounds really good too. And wow, new hazelnut Oreos. I didn't even know that came out, but I got to get my hands on that. Wow. Are you considering it as a possible entry with nationwide access to your beers? Yeah. Well, anytime we can send our beer into markets and make sure that the relationship makes sense, we're always down for that. Any other questions about barrel age we're pairing with German chocolate? Wow, that sounds good. How has COVID affected the beer industry? Yeesh. Well, for us, we really had to pivot into more off-premise bottle sales. A lot of our beers are in restaurants, and that's because I always want our beer to be close to great food. But during the pandemic, we kind of had to shift the focus to really bottle only. So that's what we've been doing. And, it kind of allows us to flex a different muscle, but I love restaurants. I'm looking forward to seeing our beer in restaurants, and I'm looking forward to eating in those restaurants with our beer, selfishly. Are you planning a rum barrel-aged beer? Yes, we are. I'm trying to get my hands on more than one rum barrel. Usually with rum barrels, I can get like 2 or 3, which is great if you're going to just put it in the restaurant, which I'm totally down to do. But I'm looking for like 20. We've got some great Lefroy Scotch barrels. I don't know if anyone here likes Scotch, but we made this like Scotch ale with Lefroy barrels, and we're the crazy people. The Scotch barrel, it starts out in Kentucky. They ship them overseas to Scotland, and we're the crazy people that bought them from Scotland only to be shipped back here. But I mean, for the Scotch drinkers out there, the Lagavulins, Lefroy, like if you can get your hands on those barrels, They're amazing. I learned a valuable lesson with our bourbon barrel aged beer. You can let it sit in there for a year. With Scotch barrel aged, a week. Anything more than a week becomes offensive with phenols. Did not learn that till I did that with one of our barrels, and it was good that I started with one because otherwise we'd be in big trouble. I will sponsor a Lafroig barrel, and you shall have a Lafroig barrel. Scotch ale is amazing. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our actual brand new beer. I'm so excited. We just released this in the market 2 weeks ago. It's our bourbon barrel aged coffee cake imperial stout. Doesn't that sound good? It's been too long. I've been wanting to do coffee beer for a couple of years. I just needed to find the right partner. And we linked up with Sparrow Coffee Company from Chicago. And they pride themselves on making coffee and blends for fine dining restaurants. This is so exciting. This is really not even in the market yet. So you get that espresso on the nose with a little bit of vanilla. Like, what a great digestif. A wonderful way to finish the meal. For the fine dining restaurant, I want to serve this, and I probably still will, in a coffee cup and have them do pair it with a donut. This is totally copying Thomas Keller with his coffee and donut. Like, you use this at French Laundry and per se, but the final course is a coffee and donut, and so this beer kind of pays homage to him. And believe it or not, the base beer for the gingerbread Imperial Stout is the same base beer for this coffee cake. Yeah, a big scoop of vanilla ice cream in here. That's what we need to do. Anyone who's got ice cream, vanilla, or really any ice cream in the fridge, throw a big scoop in here. You're going to be really, really happy. When we released this beer, and it's really been a really small release, we had our pastry chef, the same one who makes the 12-layer cake, create this chocolate-covered cherry biscotti, and we were dipping the biscotti in the beer, and it was delicious. Is there caffeine in this, Alyssa Miller? Oh yeah, there is. So, you're getting the ABV, you're getting the buzz from two different places. No one's going to bed tonight, everybody. The gingerbread is amazing after Woodford bourbon caramels. Ooh, yeah, share the Woodford bourbon caramels. That sounds good. What is the process of introducing the coffee flavor in the beer? Sorry, Eric, I'm going to get to that because I made a lot of coffee beers, but I was having difficulty finding balance. I really wanted the coffee to be the prominent aromatic and flavor, but I didn't want it to be overwhelming. And so what we do, everyone can keep a secret, right? What we do is we make a cold brew and with the beans, and then we incorporate it post-fermentation so that it's at a cold temperature, and we just kind of blend the two together would be the best way to say that. Okay, look, if we can all keep a secret, I also take a giant cheesecloth of the beans, and I develop these tanks where I have different rods so that I can hang ingredients inside of it. So I do that too, all right? If we're just being honest on this, so there's beans in there, and there's also a blend of cold brew. This is like a glass of dark chocolate covered espresso. I love dark chocolate covered espresso greens. Yeah, those are good. This Thomas Keller-like beer, are you influenced by his take on cuisine? Do you find yourself drawing on sentimental references? Sam and Cornett, someone's been there before. This Thomas Keller-like beer, you're probably going to have to ask him. I've never seen him consume beer. I've seen him consume champagne. Are you influenced by his take on cuisine? I am, because his take on cuisine is that you should be able to, you want the guest, whatever they're consuming, to come back for more and to be kind of teased into enjoying first on the aromatic, then on the palate. And he's also a chef that will go to any length to find the best ingredient. And I find myself doing the same thing. I mean, he's a legend and strive to be there, but it was a great person to learn from. And when we first started Moody, actually the first beer we really created was a Shea Black Truffle Pilsner. And my business partner was patient on that one. We kind of stopped production in general. I brought in a ridiculous amount of truffles before we even brewed any beer. So like first I took the most difficult style of beer to create, which is a Pilsner. Then I brought in the most expensive ingredient that I could get my hands on, which is truffles, and did something that I don't know if anyone else has done, brought the two together, and then had to present it at Per Se with 17 members of the press, Curtis Duffy, who has who had a 3 Michelin star restaurant in Chicago, just opened a place called Ever, and showcased it there for the very first time. And it was fantastic. It was wonderful. And I'm always trying to bring in more truffles. In fact, I'm actually sitting on a ridiculous amount of truffles. And if the world didn't shut down in March, everyone would be drinking truffle Pilsner at Moody Time. And I plan on doing it again. Okay. Amazing. Sorry. That's exactly what you expect. Do you follow, pay attention to reviews? Yes. Do I pay attention to reviews? Yeah. Do I have a pretty thick skin? Yeah. I mean, since I got into this industry, criticism is just part of being in this business. You get critiqued internally, externally. If you're creating anything, someone has an opinion. The best thing you can do is listen. And when I was at Goose Island, I would take off my boots, take off my shirt, put another shirt on, and just sit at the bar and listen to what people had to say. And some people say nice things, some people say less than nice things, mean things. But you can learn from all of it as long as you're willing to listen. And I think that's what's made me a better brewer. So yeah, I definitely pay attention. Where can we buy the truffle Pilsner? We need to make more of it, but soon. The truffles, can anyone name the venue or restaurant? The truffle used to be available. Wow. It used to be available in Pilsen. Buy it up. Have you brewed any beers with chili peppers? Oh yeah. There's what is it called? The Padron? Is it the Padron? Yeah, the Padron. Padron chili pepper were like 1 out of every 10 is spicy. So what I used to have to do is taste every pepper, knock out the spicy ones, and the rest of the peppers have this beautiful fruit note to it. I love using peppers in IPAs because of the fruit notes, but it can be quite painful getting there. Sounds so good, spicy. Yeah, it can be nice. So what wines do you enjoy most when you aren't drinking beer? I always push not only myself, but our brewers to drink wine. I think there's a great way to find inspiration from flavors and also barrel aging. What wines do I like? Well, the last 2 days of, actually the last couple of weeks, it's been a lot of sparkling because there's been a lot of celebrating going on here. But so bubbles is always a wonderful way to begin. Yeah, I could drink bubbles all day. So champagne, cava, prosecco, anything with bubbles, because it feels like you're winning. For the reds, I like Italian reds. Sangiovese is pretty fantastic. And look, I love Napa Cab too. Big and bold and full of flavor and necessary for all the red meats, the porterhouses, the ribeyes. We're in Chicago. That's what we do. So big, bold red wines, always a part of the menu. What was your initial goal when you entered WashU? Art's gonna like this one. I was pre-med, okay? I was pre-med, and it was, biochem. I remember all those classes. My passion was always food. I just didn't know anyone who was involved in kitchens, and so when I found that food journalism class, I just remember just being like, wow, you can make a career out of like food or maybe brewing or maybe winemaking, something like that. And I kind of went with it. And when I was at WashU, my junior and senior year, I worked at a restaurant, Tejas. It was, it was awesome. It was like this, I don't want to call it fine dining. It was a Southwestern restaurant, but I had so much fun. I would go there after class, and I loved the camaraderie in the kitchen. And we had a great time. And I just remember tasting and that being a part of my job and cutting things up and cooking. And it was just, I loved to use my hands to build something. And you saw people, it was an open kitchen. So you saw how happy the food made people. And I was like, wow, I should learn how to do this, or certainly try to be a little bit better. What major? Pre-med rules. It does. What major do you graduate with? I was a political science major and a minor in business and a minor in African American studies. How about, wonderful bakery. We're in Brazil now, but now we wish we were brewing. You're always welcome. I mean, look, if I knew there was so much science involved in brewing, I probably should have just stayed in med. You know what I mean? Because I think some of the best brewers have science background. So all you meds out there, if you want to get into brewing, hit me up. We could use you. Ted Drew's, wow, wouldn't that be cool? A Ted Drew's flavored beer. I can't believe someone hasn't already done that, but they really should, because if you can't incorporate the Ted Drew's in your beer, you might as well just have it right next to the beer. I homebrewed in med school. I bet you were very popular, because I always feel like every homebrew you have like 5 new friends, and that's only because of the batch size. People do 5 gallons, but it's hard not to make friends when you've got beers to share. Any advice for homebrewers? Yeah, love Tejas, miss it. Yeah, me too. Any advice for homebrewers? Try to keep a clean environment. That's it, and try to take notes, because once you start brewing, you probably start drinking, and those two really don't mix, because it's hard to do your job when you're intoxicated. People think, when you brew all day, you drink all day. It just takes twice as long, So like, wait till the end of the brew to enjoy your brew. Take as many notes as possible so you don't make the same mistakes. What's the size of the team at Moody Tongue these days? How many brewers? Right now we have 3 brewers. I like to keep a very tight team. I'm big on sense of ownership. So the person that brews the beer the entire way through. The person that cellars the beer, which just means transfers the beer to tanks or barrels, they do that. And defined roles are an important part of Moody Tongue. And I think brewers enjoy that. Love the slide, late night at Del Taco. Yeah, that's dangerous. Del Taco drive-through. How big are your brewing batches? We have a 25-barrel brew house. We have 60 barrel, 40 barrel, and a 10 barrel tank. So depending on if it's experimental, it's probably going in 10 barrel. If it's our perennials, it'll go into 40 or 60. Is the Rat still open? I wish it was. That was only my freshman year. Man, I missed the Rat. That was fun. I remember drinking Amberbach for like $1. And yeah, those were good days. How do you feel about this? Why don't you distribute in all 50 states? Why don't we distribute in all 50 states? We need distributors in all 50 states and partnerships, but in due time. How do you feel about consolidation in the craft beer industry? Goose Island acquiring, that was an exciting time. I was at Goose Island when they were acquired by Anheuser-Busch. I just remember a lot of people coming in that I had never seen before, and then all of a sudden we were sold. But for me, it really didn't affect me, and for Goose Island, I think it's really helped them. Now they have a lot more resources, and everyone knows about Goose Island because it's everywhere. So for them, it worked out well. Did you take the beer making class at WashU? They had a beer making class at WashU? Wow, I missed that one. Naming, can you tell me about the beer label design as well? Actually, our beer label was designed by a WashU grad too, Aaron Becker. Fantastic guy. And what you'll see is the Y drops into the U and creates a tongue. You kind of see that here, but I'm trying to incorporate as much WashU as possible in this company. Brisket, wow, someone got brisket and ribs. Well done. We'll be expanding your tasting rooms outside of Chicago. That's our goal. That's absolutely our goal. And we plan on doing it. Do you plan to stay local, or do you want to become a national brand? Well, we sell our beer in South Carolina, North Carolina, Indiana, Kentucky, New York, Texas, Alabama, and we'll continue to grow. The Netherlands, so Amsterdam if you guys are visiting, and China. What relationships does Moody Tongue have with other kinds of artists? Well, we've hired many musicians on our team, and we're always looking to meet more artists. So contact moodytongue.com. Come to Portland, yes. Yay, North Carolina, we love it too. Massachusetts, in due time. Why are labels tongue image different on the stouts? Well, if you look at the top of the stout label, it's just a barrel. So it's our kind of subtle wink at barrel aging. What's your favorite place to get beer in St. Louis? It used to be Riddles, which Riddles Penultimate doesn't exist anymore, but I'm open to suggestion. I plan on visiting St. Louis very, very soon to visit some Camp Sabra friends from the Ozarks, Jason Glazer. there's definitely a beer making class and wow, that'd be awesome. I'd love to be a part of that beer making class. Do you do any collaboration beers? I worked at Field Museum. We're always open to collaboration beers. We've done a lot of collaboration beers with hotels and restaurants, but I love collaborating. So jared@moodytongue.com, hit me up. Too drunk to differentiate a barrel from a ton. Yeah, that's fair. Have you been doing virtuals like this during COVID? Are you doing more of this? Yes, I've done many of these during COVID with University of Chicago, with Northwestern, with a lot of the apartment buildings, and I really enjoy them. It's fun. I miss people, and if this is as close as I can get, I'll take it. But this is what beer is all about: is being able to connect and taste and talk. Four Hands, delicious brewery. Here's a link to it. Are you doing really? Yeah. Who remembers the WashU dorms basketball courts? I don't know if I do. Maybe. Does anyone else have any questions about our beer, brewing, or these beers? I hope everyone's feeling really good right now. Yeah, Mac. I see Go Maroons, but macaroons would be pretty good too. Why not cans? Oh man. We're gonna get to cans. That was my decision because I just like glass. I like the touch of glass when I go into a fridge. I'm looking to pick up glass. Now, look, cans are super popular and they're much better when it comes to storage. But for a restaurant, I like a glass on the table. If I want to do similar tasting with work colleagues, how could I arrange it? Jeremy@moodytongue.com will totally help you with that. What's with peanut butter trend currently? Peanut butter beers. I love peanut butter and I love beer. But when you incorporate peanut butter or pecans or almonds, they have a lot of oils and the oils kill the head retention. So there's definitely a way around it. And eventually we might get to it in a smaller batch. You just have to ask yourself, how many peanut butter beers can you consume in one setting? And if you can consume 3, 4, 5, we're gonna make that beer. Do you find cans versus glass taste different? No, I don't think they taste different. I think it's just touch for me. Cognac barrels for dessert beer. Ooh, give me some cognac barrels and I want to make it. Hipster pizza beer. Yep, I remember as a brewing student coming across a pizza beer. That goes back to how many pizza beers do you want to enjoy? Or do you really just want pizza and beer? That's a personal question. Tequila barrels. Love tequila barrels. Hard to get my hands on. If I can find them, yes. Malort barrels, I should. We have a wonderful relationship with the producers of Malort, and they're in Pilsen right down the street. I need to get to it. Tea beer. I've incorporated tea beers before. You have to be careful because tea beers can be astringent. And we know this because if you let the tea sit in your teacup too long, you kind of get a sensation right here. In China, they call that sa. And sa is very welcome. When I was over there, I did a collaboration beer with Eric White at the Shangri-La Hotel in Hangzhou. And we sourced tea, we brought it back, and we made this really beautiful tea saison. But that astringency, I don't know if it would be very popular in the States. How important is consistency for you? Consistency is everything. I mean, because if someone enjoys our beer, like the juice lychee, they expect it to be the same. And that's our biggest challenge, is making beers consistent. Same thing in the kitchen, making food consistent. What about pizza with pizza beer? Well, you know what? Let's try it. Let's get some emails there and we'll throw a bunch of basil in a beer and we'll see what happens. Do you speak Mandarin? I wish I did, but I don't. Any plans for mustache expansion a la Jeremy? You'll have to ask Jeremy about that. I like that mustache. I think it's very brewer friendly. What's the most difficult part of brewing beer? Oh, we're in Sig Up. I was in Sig Up. What's your emos order? I think they have like it's like whatever, it's like their special, whatever it is. It's like sausage, peppers, like onions. It's like the emo special, but I'm totally messing that up. I love emos, by the way. Last beer you can have. Which beer is it? Goose had a deer. Did you try it? I didn't try the goose beer that had tea in it. Last beer you can have. Which beer is it? Okay. I love Bitburger Pilsner. Maybe my last beer that if I didn't create it. Yeah. I mean, it's just a beautifully constructed Pilsner. What's the most difficult part of brewing beer? No, I love it. Maybe difficult part. You can only drink so much before you lose, your palate. I wish I could just taste more without getting intoxicated. That's a weird answer, but it's true. I mean, a lot of times when you go to like tastings events, you have only 3 or 4 opportunities before either you get too intoxicated or you get palate fatigue. And I'm all about the flavor. I'm not about the buzz is fine too, but buzzes are easy. Like getting to taste as much as possible is difficult. Beer making books to recommend. Okay. I like this one right now, American Sour Beers. I was prepared for that. This is not only a great historical book, but it teaches you how to make these styles of beer. So I'm into it. The Joy of Homebrewing is a good one too, but I like this one. Wow, that's cool. New Belgian brewer. Nice. What's your favorite beer that's not Moody? Tongue, Bitburger, a really good book. How does craft brewing compare to craft distilling? I've never distilled anything. I've wanted to, but the thing is, it goes back to tasting. Like, I feel like if for that kind of booze, there's only so much real estate in the palate and the mind. So like maybe a couple sips, I'd be schnookered. Then I'm worthless. Put me on a couch. A couple hours later, I may be able to talk, but like, I don't know if anything good is coming out of my mouth. So I don't know. I have much to learn about distilling. Jim Cook's yeast trick for drinking more beer. I've heard about it, but I've never done it. The beer on that tastes like an evolution of the WashU blend. Yes, it was an evolution of the WashU blend because we're always trying to improve. But yeah, that WashU blend is really, really similar to what we're tasting here. Love, sour, special, lactose, Brett. How do you balance the joy of brewing beer with the necessity of running a company? That's why you have a business partner like Jeremy. That's how we balance it. Schnookered, exactly. Nice Schnooks. Are you a super taster? I wish I was. I mean, who can put the super taster title on their business card? It would be pretty sweet, but I haven't taken the test, and I don't know. I think I'm great at tasting beer, great at tasting wine, great at tasting food, but there's a lot of food scientists that can do amazing things, and I just haven't explored that craft. I can make stir fry for dinner. Can I use the leftover lychee beer? Yeah. Stir-fried chicken for dinner? Absolutely, because that beer without alcohol, you can pour it in there, and it's going to pick up all the solids that are stuck to your pan. You stir it all together. It would be really delicious. Stir-fry would work well. Poor Jeremy. We take care of Jeremy here. He gets plenty of beer and positive reinforcement. Leftover beer. Oh, I see. You're commenting earlier. Wow. This is awesome. Do we have any, I'm a lightweight. Okay. Do you offer growler fills at the brewery? Yes.
Yeah, we have a question.
Oh, hello. Yes.
Hey, how are you? So, like, I'm just wondering. I appreciate the fact that you want to push the boundaries for beer, but when is too much too much, right? Right? Like candy cane, vanilla. Where do we draw the line and say it's no longer beer, it's something else?
It's a really good question. When people stop buying those crazy concoctions, it's too much. But no one stopped buying, and so it's encouraging brewers to throw more things in there. I don't do that. Well, that's not true. I do throw something, but I try to incorporate an ingredient when I have a purpose. I really have to have a strong reason to put an ingredient there, or otherwise I won't do it. But all the other brewers out there, they're gonna, and myself, we're going to keep pushing until the customer tells us otherwise. And in America, that's not happening anytime soon. And when you travel overseas, you're seeing, like whether you're in Italy or England, you're seeing menus that are always talking about American craft beer, American style IPA, American style stout. And it kind of gives people an excuse to do whatever they want. Very American. So I don't see that trend changing anytime soon. What's in the gingerbread beer that makes the gingerbread? All the gingerbread spices.
I got a second question. Sorry.
No, don't.
I feel like all these IPAs have become so overly hopped also, like where you've got double hop and triple hop and dry hopped and all this stuff. And I'm beginning to feel like, I don't know, that like I'm losing sight of the beer and just like, I'm just bombarded with this overly hopped beer. Why is that? Is that popular still?
Believe it or not, it is. Now, look, my suggestion is find a brewery that makes beers that you enjoy. If you like their beers, try their IPA. That's the best way to explore beer because there's so many options. You walk down a beer aisle these days, it's like a firework display. It's overwhelming. So if they're making your favorite wheat beer, try their IPA. If they're making your favorite Pilsner, try their IPA. That's the best way to explore without being burnt. And double IPA could just mean a couple hops more. Triple IPA could be a couple hops more. Remember, we don't have to follow any rules. We can throw whatever we want on a label. So it really comes down to the brewery making the beer that you enjoy and then exploring the styles that they create. But I get it. No one wants to pay money for something they don't like because then the beers just sit in the fridge. It's not, you can't give your neighbor 5 beers, you know what I mean? Because you had one already. And then it's just take up real estate and then someone gets upset at you. So then they move from the fridge to the pantry. The pantry gets moved to the basement. The basement, all of a sudden you're collecting beers, but you're not a collector. So I get it. I get it. Trust the breweries that make the beer you like and go from there. Can we set up a brewery tour with you? Yeah, of course you can. Once all this is settled and we get ourselves on the right path, I love doing brewery tours and we do them usually on Saturdays and Sundays. Do you have a rec for an aromatic IPA to drink? Sierra Nevada, I mean, look, everyone's like, oh, Sierra Nevada, I've had that for 100 years, but they do an exceptionally well IPA, and there's a reason why they've been around forever. I think they do. Yeah, I think that's great. And it also depends on where you live. If you tell me where you live, I'll tell you what IPA I like. Strongest beer I've ever made. Now the gingerbread's probably that beer. And that's like 15%. That's not a weak beer by any means. My favorites, in San Francisco, so you guys are, Russian River makes a pretty good beer called Pliny. I know some of us have had that before. That's a really good IPA. What's really cool, there's a lot of really, really small breweries on the West Coast. So it's like having a brewery is like having a local baker or butcher, go down there and taste something really small batch that you maybe only get once a year. What's your favorite San Diego beer? I have to think about that. Charleston's my favorite IPA in Charleston, South Carolina. Does Westbrook make an IPA? That'd be pretty good. It's Rare Barrel, drop down the coast. McKellar's good. Most exotic flavors you want to brew. What's the dream? Truffle was the dream. We did that. I just want to make more of it. I love truffles, white truffles. I'd like to make I made one white truffle beer. It's called Alba Madonna. Only made one keg of it because it was so expensive. But it was like, if you've had white truffles, they're usually shaved on pasta with brown butter. It's exactly what it tasted like. It was, well, not the brown butter part, but it was nutty and it was truffly. And that's what you should have in a truffle beer. To use White Labs yeast, I have in the past. We have a wonderful yeast company in Chicago called Omega. What do you pair with truffle beer? Truffles. So what would I pair with truffle beer? Truffle with pasta. And keep it simple. Truffle speaks for itself, so you don't need a lot. You just need to make sure the food and the beer don't step on each other's toes. That was awesome. Varun. Hey, man. North Coast Fieldworks, great. Rare Barrel's awesome too in San Francisco. The truffle beer was something crazy different. That it was. All right. Do we have any other questions for our tasting before everyone comes to visit me once you can?
Question.
Yeah.
I love that you're doing this. I appreciate it so much.
Gosh, I love doing this too.
If you could brew one style of beer, what would it be?
Pilsner, because it's so difficult. Yeah, I'm all about the challenge, and there's no room for error with a Pilsner. And
is it because of the process in fermenting it and the lagering? Is it the hard part of it, or what makes it so hard?
That's definitely, the process is difficult, but it's the fact that it's there's not a lot of flavor, there's not a lot of ingredients, so you can't cover up any flaws. It's like a consomme in the culinary world. It's either crystal and brilliant and perfect, or it is just horribly wrong. And I like that, either right or wrong. That really works for me. And making a Pilsner, the style is unforgiving, and when it's wrong, it is really, really wrong. So I always want to push myself, and Pilsner just challenges me. So that would be it. And you can drink a lot of Pilsner. I like to drink a lot of beer.
Aaron, I think that's a great time to end it right here. Thank you so much for your time. Your passion for beer and your confidence in brewing is unsurpassed. Thank you so much. And thank all of you this evening for joining us. We look forward to seeing you all again at some future programs. Please, everybody, drive safely. Just kidding. I'm hoping everybody's at home right now. Enjoy your beer. Enjoy your evening. All be safe. We hope to see all of you, perhaps at Moody Tongue in the future when we're back to normal. Thank you all. Bye-bye.